The year is 2018, and the hype train is full steam ahead in the world of basketball. Teams across the bottom half of the NBA have been jockeying for position, sitting their star players, trading key pieces, and purposely tallying as many losses as possible in hopes of earning the rights to draft this man at the upcoming NBA draft lottery. 18-year-old phenom Zion Williamson was spending this period rewriting the record books in his freshman season at Duke in what would eventually become one of the greatest one-and-done seasons of all time, and the NBA was salivating. People had been watching this viral sensation dunk all over the competition since he was in high school, and they were ready to watch him completely change the NBA forever. He was hailed as a savior, once in a generation, the best player of this decade, the best talent since LeBron James himself, you name it. Sounds familiar, right? No superlative could do this kid's game justice. He was the centerpiece of the next dynasty. The draft lottery, to decide where Zion was going, averaged more viewers than most playoff games that year. And when it was revealed he was heading to the New Orleans Pelicans, this franchise was penciled in for 2 decades of unprecedented success and a fistful of rings at the very least. So, how has it turned out so far? Let's see. His team has finished above 500 once, he's played in 100 games in 3 years, has never seen the court in a playoff game, and spends more time in OnlyFans girls' DMs than on the court. Huh. Fast forward to 2023, and the hype train has left the station once again, as 7'4" French unicorn Victor Wembanyama has taken the basketball world by storm. Wemby is truly built like no prospect we've ever seen, as he combines his ridiculous frame and 8-foot wingspan with a guard's handle and a 35-foot range. Just unreal. As a result, Wemby has drawn many of the same comparisons that Zion did as he made his dramatic ascent towards the league. Unicorn, best prospect since LeBron, franchise changer, etc., etc. These narratives and superlatives grow more and more tired with every passing draft cycle, as they outline many of the fundamental flaws with how we evaluate prospects these days. Perhaps the bust label is thrown around so frequently and profusely because we don't know how to properly gauge our expectations for these supposedly league-altering talents. Hey folks, my name is Dylan Brett, and on this channel, we break down all things basketball, whether it's high school, college, or the NBA. Just a reminder to like and subscribe to the channel for more content just like this, and leave a comment down below with your thoughts on the video. Now, as draft night grows closer and closer, and we prepare ourselves to crown yet another new generational prospect, it's about time we take a look in the mirror and reevaluate the way we judge these kids and assess their overall impact.
His projection is much higher than any college player.
He's the best prospect since LeBron James, which is almost 20 years ago.
He has a combination of things that we have never seen. 7'5", quickness, footwork, all of the things. That's the scariest thing that we've ever seen.
You see why teams racing to the bottom to try to get this guy.
Now, to understand what we should expect out of Wemby when he enters the league, we first need to set a baseline by understanding the typical performance and career of a number 1 overall pick. To do this, I compiled this spreadsheet of every number 1 pick this century and averaged their stats with the team that drafted them to understand what the baseline for a franchise-altering talent looks like. This way, as Wemby's career progresses, we can compare his overall trajectory to those of past top picks and assess where he stacks up amongst them. Now, there are obviously anomalies like the greats such as LeBron James that will inflate the stats dramatically, but there are also generational busts like Anthony Bennett to weigh them down. There's also a large group of players like Derrick Rose and Dwight Howard who have had very respectable careers, so this crop of guys should give us a good median as to what a number 1 pick should play like. So with that being said, how does the typical number 1 overall pick in the NBA draft pan out? Well, let me tell you, the bar isn't all that high. Since the turn of the century, there have been 23 players selected first overall in the NBA draft. Most, if not all, of these players have been billed as potential saviors destined to turn a franchise around and set them on the trajectory towards the ultimate goal, an NBA championship. Well, as it turns out, just 6 of these players have gone on to win a ring at any point in their career, and only 2 have done it with the team that drafted them. Oh yeah, and they were on the same team. This means that this century, 4% of teams lucky enough to earn the first overall pick won a title with that very pick on the roster. If we go even further, while 79% of these players managed to make the playoffs with their respective teams, only 9% were able to do so as a rookie. So as far as an instant impact on success goes, the odds aren't exactly in San Antonio's favor out of the gates. Okay, but even though they weren't able to achieve the ultimate goal, I'm sure a lot of these guys have made serious impacts on the franchise that drafted them on the court. I mean, after all, a number one pick is always poised to make an instant difference for the franchise that drafts them. Well, let's see. On average, these 23 players have added only 6 wins for the team that drafted them in their rookie season. Better yet, only 34% of the guys on this list earned all rookie or rookie of the year honors. Heck, 3 of them didn't even play the required number of games to qualify for most advanced stats categories. So why on earth are we expecting Victor Wembanyama to instantly resurrect a San Antonio Spurs team that hasn't had a winning season in 5 years overnight? Okay, so we've established that it obviously takes more than one season to build a winner in this league. So let's talk about longevity then. A number one pick is usually hailed as a player that can bring stability and prolonged success to a struggling franchise and really right the ship for teams stuck in a downward spiral. Well, the numbers don't exactly bode well for that narrative either. Just 65% of the guys on this list have signed a contract extension with the team that drafted them, as the average number one pick spends just 5 seasons with their first team. In those 5 years, these number one picks averaged 1 All-Star appearance and less than 1 All-NBA selection in their tenures with the team that drafted them. If you remove the anomaly of LeBron James, his 11 All-Star games, and 11 All-NBA selections from this equation, the number is about as close to 0 as you can possibly get. When you pool every single year that these 23 players have played with the teams that drafted them all together, only about half of those are winning seasons. Moving on even further, it goes without saying that team success and awards really aren't everything for a number one pick, as virtually all of these players have been drafted into dysfunctional franchises in bad situations. So do their individual stats reflect a franchise-altering level of talent? Not really. One of my favorite advanced stats to look at when determining player value is VORP, or Value Over Replacement Player, or VORP as I like to call it. It basically tells us how many more points per 100 possessions a player contributes to his team than the average bench-level NBA player. It sort of works like WAR in baseball if you're familiar with that. So the average VORP of an NBA player this season was about 2.0. So average that out over the NBA career span of 5 years that we discussed earlier, and you get your average career VORP of 10. The average VORP of our 23 number one picks, 13.5. Remove LeBron from that equation, and the number dips just below 10 at 9.9. This means that when averaged together, these number one picks contribute around the same value to their respective teams as Russell Westbrook did for the Lakers in 2023. Nothing more, nothing less. That number seems pretty respectable, and it absolutely is until you realize that nearly all of these prospects were billed as game changers and franchise centerpieces for the teams that drafted them. So now let's look at win shares, which is a very convenient stat that determines how much a player's individual efforts contribute to his team's overall performance. The average starter's win shares for a full season is about 2 to 3. So we'll once again take that number and multiply it by our average of 5 seasons to get to 10, then divide the 29.2 win shares of the average number one pick by that number to get a season average of 2.92 win shares. Once again, right on the league average threshold. Look, I can throw numbers and advanced stats at you forever to prove this point and hammer it home, but the truth to all of this is that your average number one pick is typically no more than a run-of-the-mill, serviceable NBA starter. So what does that mean for a guy like Wemby as he enters draft night with the weight of the world on his shoulders? Perhaps the harsh lesson that basketball fans need to learn is to derail the hype train and take a significant amount of weight off this kid's shoulders by simply dimming the outlook on his already bright future. And let me get something straight, this isn't at all meant as disrespect or an indictment on Wemby's talent, but let's take a minute to hamper our expectations and allow his game to speak for itself. Absolutely nothing comes easy when you enter the league as a teenager and you're already expected to be an overnight success and turn a middling franchise on the heels of their worst stretch in decades into a contender. There are so many players on the list we just went over that had some serious game and could have flourished in a different role, but were often bogged down by the harsh, unforgiving expectations of fans to try and be something that they're just not. Look, ultimately, Wemby is still a ridiculous talent, one like we've truly never seen before, but it's frustrating to realize that his career trajectory will likely be determined by his ability to block out the noise on a nightly basis, rather than his ability on the court as a basketball player. See, what people fail to understand is that by putting such immense pressure on a player, even one of Wemby's caliber, to succeed right out of the gate, we're setting them up to embark on a career in which nearly everything they do will be perceived as a failure.